We are. Okay. Anyway, sorry. So what was the last thing? What was the last thing you guys heard? Because we were talking about Mifune and how amazing he is. But I just because he gets going on that monologue where he's talking about he's like you can't trust farmers because this and this and they've got Jack Nicholson is Mifune for some reason. It's like they got stores of this and he's like pull. He's like when they say no we have no rice, no we have no barley, no whatever. He's like go check, pull up their floorboards. If it's not there, it's in the barn. They've got secret fields in the mountains, all this stuff, blah 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 blah. And you kind of start going like, you know a lot about this.
Yeah,
oh, I get it. And then he goes and you get that part, and then he goes, and then can you blame them because you do this to them, and then you go, oh yeah, and he just has that whole thing,
and he's looking at him. He's like he's so enraged, but he's got tears in his eyes, and it's just one of those things that, and here's the other amazing part of that scene. They linger on his. It's just a monologue and just lingering on his face. He's dressed in the samurai outfit and all that. And then at the end, they cut to Takeshi Shimura's face, where he realizes that you
were raised as a farmer.
Yeah, but the look on his face, it's like the first time that he sees him as he's not silly anymore.
Right,
he's like he's a real person now.
And same thing for us. Yeah, and then he goes...
Agreed.
Yeah, and he goes, yeah.
Which is a real... Like, I'm just now realizing that now. Like, what a brilliant technique to show a character have the understanding because we as an audience are now understanding it. And so you have that shared connection with Takeshi Shimura on that level. And then you also sympathize with Mifune now and his character. And, I mean, that's why you care so much about all these characters because they're just using all these brilliant ways of just making sure that you feel what they're feeling and identifying with what they're going through.
Absolutely. And sorry, I'm trying to fix this thing that it's hard to do this, guys, with a
Are we still
functionality.
live?
We are live, but just things are working against us. But so and he has that whole thing, and it's it's entirely motivated by what's going on. It's entirely motivated by character. It doesn't feel out of place. It's a great monologue that fits narratively and everything. It doesn't.
Adds a substantial
layer.
Happens. Yeah.
But then also, it's just one of the most
it's so beautiful.
Honestly laid bare examinations of class and classism that I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Where it's like, you think poor people steal and you think poor people do this and you think poor people are this and then you can't trust them. And you're part of the system that does it, that perpetuates it, causes people to have to be that way because they're so desperate. Like, what do you...
It's one of those great...
I think so incredible.
It's because he's saying...
It's so effective.
It's this and it's this.
And touching, yeah.
It's not that it's one or the other.
Absolutely.
And I think one of the real things that why I'm responding on such a deep level to all of Kurosawa's catalog so far is that... Are we good?
Yeah, I think we are.
Okay. Is the fact that, like, I know a major thing that I've seen just in stuff that I've done that... I go back and I'm like, oh, there's a reoccurring theme here. It's just like, I've always been a big fan in my own stuff of like putting characters through the ringer and then at the end having a moment, however small, of good. And then that, because of how much they've gone through, that is amplified so much by such a simple gesture one way or another. And I think that's because... And I think Kurosawa is very much the same way, where he has a kind of bleak look about humanity as a whole in terms of like groupthink and mob mentality and government and stuff like that. But on an individual level, we are still capable of genuinely good. There are still genuinely good people with who can do genuinely kind things for each other.
Absolutely.
And because the world is such a harsh place where that is not the norm, those moments of kindness become that much more beautiful in life. And I believe that just in life. And I certainly tap into that myself in what I try to make on my own. And I think he does the same thing. Like there's just similar themes, and it's such a beautiful thing. and like a timeless thing to constantly analyze, because you see it in each one of his movies. He always has stuff like that peppered throughout. It's very interesting, and it's always so beautiful.
And what I mean, this is at heart a movie about desperate people, and then people who are doing something selfless to help them, right? Like people who are desperate because of the sort of the difficulties of the world and living in a society. But then people who are stepping up and doing things for them. Guys, we're still live, right? Someone please say something. Sorry. It just seems like people were talking and now it's sort of slowed down. I just want to make sure we are still live. Okay, cool. Good. Thanks. That's all. Still live, just listening, which is great. This is fantastic.
Tell us how good we are.
Yeah. I just wanted to make sure, because we had such.
We had to restart it so we didn't have any chat stuff, and it was blank.
And we need validation. Oh, here we go. Emilak was typing. One of the things I love most about this movie is how unceremonious the deaths are. Yes, Mifune's is no exception. I know, it's kind of shocking that you go, that was it. He's gone.
Oh, I know. Yeah.
And so of course he's going to die acting the way he does, and he does, but he still had a full satisfying arc. If this were a modern movie, his death would have been like 5 minutes of slow-mo and become orchestral. Honestly, there is more to do about the deaths of a number of the bandits. Like the guy who gets killed, the first death gets a slow-mo kind of.
Oh, this is one of the first movies to utilize slow-mo in any meaningful way. Yeah, if not the first.
If I'm just booming orchestral score, cutting crying faces of the peasant farmers. Not that can't be emotional, Boromir. But movies don't really let important characters just get cut down. Right?
And then that's just it.
Yeah, might work against it. Yeah.
And you show the other characters within the scene who cared about him.
Yeah.
They mourn for him very briefly, but they're still in the midst of a battle, so they don't linger.
Yeah.
And then we're moving on, and they just leave him in the rain, and you're just like, yeah.
And
it's way more, almost way more impactful that way because of how sudden, how quick, and how fast you move on to the next thing. And it really lingers with you well after the fact.
Absolutely. And then it drives somehow sudden and senseless. Really, war and violence is, and that's embodied by. Because I keep wanting to call him Kudzu, which is not Kunzu. I can't remember his name. What's his name? The freaking stone cold badass.
Yeah.
That dude gets shot, and you go, no, that guy, and he gets up and he hurls his sword, and then Mifune goes after the guy, kills him, and and then gets killed himself. And that wonderful shot, that tracking shot from the outside as he of the building as he's like pushing the dude out and then stabs him, and it's so great.
Yeah.
And then he dies, and then cuts to outside, and what's his name? What's the other dude? The young guy. The young guy is running around going like, "Where are the bandits? Where are they? I want to kill them." And he goes, "They're all dead."
Yeah.
And you go, "Gosh darn it! Those two guys died right at the end." That was it. They had to do was survive like 5 more minutes, and we would have had that team together.
Yeah.
And it really just drives it home that you go like, that's what war is. That's what violence is. That's what it is. It's senseless, and it cuts down vibrant lives in an instant.
Oh, it's so.
I mean, how terrible is it that dude who's just such an amazing got shot by someone who's unseen? I mean, it sucks.
Yeah.
He's just walking away and just gets shot. And you go, that's how that dude went down?
Yeah, one of them dies off screen. Like, and you come back and they're bringing him back into the village on a sled.
Go to me.
Yeah, and he was so.
He's the first guy to join up, I think. Who's like.
Yeah.
He
was the real. He
wasn't
like,
what a great name. And he's like a great name for me, whatever. Yeah.
And he wasn't. He was such an interesting character to me because he was so. I was just like, I've met people like that where I'm just like, what a good-natured, like he's funny but not too funny in the sense that like he's not showy about how funny, he's not the funny character, but he's just like a really lovable personality and very wholesome.
Yeah, he's the guy who was kind of just making jokes all the time. Right? Is he the same?
Kinda.
I mean, not making jokes. Just like he's the most vocal one.
Which
like
one?
He's kind of the leader instead, like in.
Yeah, because like Takeshi Shimura is like he's like he's the leader, but he's the silent guy. Yeah.
And the other guy's just constantly going like, "Come on, guys, this and that," and he's just like whatever.
He's the AD to the director.
Totally, absolutely. That's a wonderful way to put it.
Yeah.
And he kind of, I couldn't put my finger on it because like just as Kanbei is Japanese Morgan Freeman. I was like, he's somebody, and I was like, best I could get was Japanese Beau Bridges. That's not quite it, but he looked like him. That other dude caught a stray shot when they raid the bandit camp, and the guy was, yeah, that's what I kind of like. Part of me was, I was like, I need to go back and find out exactly what happened when Shikishi went after his wife, and man, because because of the stuff that happened to her, she just runs back into the fire. That's like horrifying.
Oh man,
but it's just great. It's confusing at first because we haven't. Yeah.
One of my favorite parts.
Because I did hear a shot, and I was like, he got shot? Yeah.
One of my favorite parts was when they have to tell them that it's like, here, they lay down a map. It's like everybody's in the hut, and they're like, here's what the plan is, and here's what we're gonna protect.
Yeah.
And here's the barrier. These 3 huts, you have to evacuate them.
Yeah.
And it causes such a huge rush. And then towards the end, when they burn them very quickly, as they expected they would. And I can't remember which character said it. I think it was one of the peasants who, it was one of the guys who lived in the hut, but everybody was freaking out about the fact, and they told him that they're like, those are going to go and they're going to burn them. Yeah. So we can't protect them because it's outside our radius.
Like, everyone get back to your post, get back in line. Yeah.
And so all the peasants are freaking out because they see all 3 huts burning, and one of the guys who was initially very offended that he was going to have to evacuate his home.
Yeah, I mean, was he the dude who was like, everyone from across the bridge come with me?
No, well, yes, he was, but at this moment, he's the guy who he's just like, listen to me. It's nothing but sticks.
Yeah, there's shacks or
there's
something.
Just shack. It's nothing but wood, and that was what I wanted those people to understand. I was just like, that stuff can be rebuilt so quickly.
And what about a character? What a character!
And what a character! I mean, it was so
for that
moment got me.
I know,
like it really, and that is a very minor character who is not on screen a lot, but just to see, because that's what I was thinking the whole time. I was like, I understand it's your home, but it's something that can easily be rebuilt in a relatively short period of time, all things considered. It's not worth your lives.
Yeah.
It's wood.
Yeah.
It's stacks of wood. That's what you're fighting for.
And I love how, and that's another moment where you see, because Mifune's character is so memorable, but he really doesn't. He stands out, but he doesn't overpower any of the other characters in the sense of like every character is equally strong, but he's the
colorful one.
But he's so that's another, because his character keeps going back and forth between kind of being like a scoundrel and a rogue and a Han Solo. A scoundrel and a rogue and everything, but then also being honorable, and then also having pathos and deep conviction about, he has depth. And that moment, he just gets infuriated with them. He's like, "You dogs!" Because they're burning them. I mean, he feels for these people. It's amazing.
Oh yeah, he does.
It's so great, and he feels he has a deep sense of duty to them. But then also at the same time, he's petty and immature and human in the same way that, like, to the extent that, like, when the guy comes back with a gun, he's like, "I'm gonna go get a gun." But I love the way.
And then he gets one, and he thinks he's doing well.
Yeah.
Like that's one of the key differences is that he is being boastful, but knowing what his backstory is, and then how immature and kind of just the way his character has been built up to that point. When he does those things, you know he made the wrong decision, but you don't doubt where his heart was in making that decision. Yeah. Like, you can tell that, like, I think he wants the approval of his fellow samurai, but then because of his backstory, he also wants to help in any way he can, and show that he is worthy and that he can be of use and he is valuable.
I mean, that's such what a nuanced and true sequence that is, because I love when the other guy's like telling him, he's amazing, he did this and he blah blah blah, and I just he's telling him how cool the other guy is, and he just goes like, he's like, "I swear I'm not bored, I promise."
Yeah.
And the guy goes in, then he just kind of like turns over and he's like, "Okay, that really was all sinking in, and I want to be admired like that because I feel, because he's that baby, he's that child." That, gosh, it broke me down to see that. I mean, it's just, oh man, this movie is so great, and it's so great And in terms of we're talking about simplicity in writing. I mean, there's a difference between simplicity and clarity, and I mean, there's not a different, but there are different things. Like that's and there's not like this movie. There's never a moment where you don't know the stakes and don't know what's going on, at least in terms of the, like, it's like they go, our village is going to get ransacked by these we're going to get destroyed. It happens constantly. We need samurai. They're coming. And then they don't come for like 3 hours.
Yeah. And
that sounds simple or whatever. And you go, and yeah, hearing that, you go like, how do you fill those 3 hours? Well, they fill it with humanity. But also over the entire film, there's this constant tension.
Yeah.
And that seems like a simple thing to set up, but you have to handle that well.
Yeah.
And everything that happens is just so clear. Nothing feels like filler. Everything seems to emanate from the character and the story. You get these characters set up that do things that are surprising, but still feel they just feel like revelations. You go, instead of going, that doesn't feel like that character, you go, I didn't know that was in that character, but that clearly is.
Mm-hmm.
And it just feels right, and it just feels right, and it just feels right. And that's what it is that's why it's the work of a master. You can't see the strings. It just feels like something that is existing in front of you and that you're part of. And it's great. It's really, truly amazing.
And he, in terms of like some more behind the scenes stuff, this was, I think at the time, the most expensive Japanese movie ever made. Because I think the schedule was really long. I think they shot for a year. He insisted on shooting on location because Toho really wanted him to, the studio, they really wanted him to shoot it on a set. They're like, we shoot movies like this all the time in terms of like the era and whatnot. And he was like, we just shoot the village stuff on a set. Yeah. And he was like just adamant
that I've got Godzilla next door. It'll be great.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like
he's like, bring him in. Yeah.
Yeah. And
like literally, we'll have Godzilla next door.
Yeah, absolutely.
He was just like, it has to be there. Like we can't. And that was a huge decision in terms of cost and the difficulty of filming, because they encountered like a lot of I guess it's like monsoons.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like
common.
Seems like Apocalypse Now. There are shots in this movie. I mean, not in terms of how much went wrong, but in terms of the scope and the difficulty.
Yeah.
There are shots in this movie where the bandits are coming in, and there's a shot because it shows the horse kind of running around, and there's a shot of the horse running around and doing stuff, and the bandit on the horse and stuff happening through like a wooden grate, or just like where people are watching it over the shoulder, they're watching it, and that shot exhausted me. Like seeing that and going like, you had a horse, you did that whole thing from that angle just so you could have these two shots. That is so exhausting to me.
Oh, dude.
To wrangle a horse and get it to do stuff like. That angle, I was like, this seems so incredibly difficult.
His movies
seems like it would kill a person to do this,
dude. Yeah,
and then you go, I think we should do the same thing. But we're gonna get it from like inside over these guys' shoulders for like 2 shots.
But
like,
that's the stuff.
It's crazy.
That's the stuff that I feel like separates his movies from other movies, because most people, their inclination is like, if we're going all this effort, get a crane in here and like let's maximize on how much money we're putting into this. But he's like, I want it to be an over the shoulder shot seen through a fence from this character's point of view, because if we show it that way and we show such a grandiose image in a very normal way, you're gonna believe it.
Yeah, and it's gonna feel like you're there, and it just gives you the geography of the scene so much.
And geography. Let's talk about that for a second.
Oh, I love
the clarity of just knowing where everyone is at any given moment, especially when the bandits arrive and it's just chaos. The fact that you understand. And it's another thing that like in modern action movies, the good directors do it still, but it's becoming more and more of a rarity. How important geography is in action movies.
Yeah, and it's a thing where it's just another part of the, like, again, it's a simple thing. It seems like a simple
It
thing.
seems like a simple
but
thing,
it's
yeah.
not. It's like
not, no.
we got to lay this out so they understand, and we got to lay it out in these ways. And they do like
because you're literally it's scientific in the sense of like you have to be like, okay, the brain can only take so much information at a moment, so like we need to set up so they understand the layout of the room, so subconsciously as they're watching every other edit here, they're gonna understand where we're at, and we can't do too many close-ups that you know, clash with each other or anything like that, or else they're gonna get confused and then they're gonna lose interest.
I mean,
and that happens quickly in action scenes. And Michael Bay is probably the worst offender at that. And I love Michael Bay movies. Not the past 10 years because he's doing nothing but Transformers. But when he does a non-transform, like Pain and Gain or just anything else, he can be great. But like the Transformer movies are very guilty of not only the complexity of the actual Transformer design, but the way he shoots action. Armageddon's a good bad example of this, is that you lose the geography of the asteroid very quickly. And I love Armageddon, but it's just like it's all over the place, and you never know where you're at in terms of like the action. Like they never go from like, okay, you never know how far away Ben Affleck is from Bruce Willis.
Right.
For starters, like they never do just a simple shot of like over the top on their camp and then go to wherever they're at, so you just understand the distance.
Yeah,
and because they have a huge point in Armageddon where like they're like how are we gonna get to them, and you never understand how the dauntingness of like that journey.
Yeah.
So it's so quick. So when they get there, I'm like, well, I don't know how far away you were in the first place.
Yeah.
So is that an accomplishment? Because you're it seems like it was.
And the thing is, like doing stuff like that, like giving you the geography of the camp, like they literally give you the map of the camp.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Gosh, what a beautiful match cut that is, where it's like the road and then they cut to them being on the road, and it's such a great match. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Because then you go, oh well, he just framed, and then you go, no, he took a picture of it, drew it to that, and then matched the frame to the drawing, and I just go, gosh darn it. But it's stuff like that where you're making sure it's stuff that. It's stuff that you just that if you just do it, it saves you. It makes it better. It makes it fuller. It makes it more complete. But it also saves you, like, if we know the geography of things in the camp, it saves you exposition.
Yes.
It saves you having to explain things in other ways. If we know where we are and if we know things, that's why Show Don't Tell is so great. Because you get to show instead of telling.
Yeah.
And people get tired of telling. And we go like, okay. And
it's not how characters talk.
Yeah.
Like, that's why this gets the believability aspect and the relationship aspects and the conversational aspects so right in this movie, and it feels you just go with it, is because no one is having to stop and being like, okay, we're at the 2.5 hour marker. Maybe we should have a character come in and just kind of summarize where we're at so far so people aren't lost. Because I guarantee you, these days, that would be a studio note that they would like enforce. Yeah. Because they'd be like, if you're going to have a movie this long, we need someone to come in to just catch us up as to like where we're at. It happens all the time. And like, look, I love Christopher Nolan, but like he's very guilty in some of his movies of like look, I love Inception, but Inception is a lot, like they could not crack the code of like how to deliver that on a visual level. And I feel like they could have, even though it's a very complex idea of like dreams within dreams within dreams. But just show that to me on a map. Yeah. Because he had a breakdown of his script so he could make sense of it. And when I saw that, and it showed the tiers of dreams and then what parts of the script were at what part of the dream level, so just they could understand where they were at any given moment when they were writing, I was like, oh, that's it. I don't need anything else. Sure. And I just wish they had done some visual interpretation of that and then saved me like 45 minutes of Joseph Gordon-Levitt explaining dreams to me.
To be fair, and I totally get that. There's some movies where I go, it's a new concept that you kind of invented in this world, and I don't mind listening to it because it's interesting. Yeah, and it's you as a writer getting to go, this is how it works. Yeah. Isn't that interesting?
And to be fair,
but that's different from like, if they, like the bass is here and the this is that, as we know. So,
Yeah.
So if we don't do this, boom, boom, boom,
You're absolutely right. And I use Inception because it's the most obvious example, but it's also probably the most justified of his entire catalog. But he does it in a lot of his movies,
And that's true. And you're right. And this speaks to exactly what you're saying. Like Ellen Page, and you always realize that, like, depending on how well done the movie is, because sometimes movies you can do it well. But like, yeah, Ellen Page is the character who gets the exposition dumps. There's always a person who's like, to it, I'm new to this, and you go, right, I know why you're here.
Yeah.
So that we can just have. He's like, well, here's the thing.
What's your backstory? I'm new.
Yeah, right, yeah. Give him the kick. The kick is of this and this and that. It's like, okay, thanks, and they go. Can we?
Do you guys get it?
All right.
Cool. All right.
Yeah. Okay. Look at DiCaprio. He's pretty. You'll just fine. Basil Exposition. Oh my gosh. I was so young when I saw these movies.
What's Basil Exposition?
Basil Exposition.
Is that like?
That's from Austin Powers. That's Michael York and Austin Powers. His name is Basil Exposition. That's fantastic.
Oh my god.
That never clicked with me because I haven't heard that name in 10 years.
Oh my god.
I think my brain when I was a kid was like Expedition. Or I
forgot that was Michael York.
Yeah.
'Cause now I know who Michael York is, and I'm like, oh my god, that's Michael York.
Oh, that's
oh
so
wow.
great. Thank
I
you.
need to rewatch the Austin Powers movies.
We should do them.
Do you think have you seen Faulty Towers?
Yeah, bits of it.
Do you like it? I feel like you would love it.
I saw it very, very little, but it's John Cleese.
It's very good.
What else could you?
I'm a big Frasier guy too. Like they have this thing where the best episodes of Frasier, it's just like they have a party and then things start to go wrong and everything starts to compound on everything and everybody's going in one door while someone's going in another door and then they come back out and it's even worse for some reason.
Yeah.
And like that's Faulty Towers every episode.
Yeah.
And I love that kind of comedy, that absurdist, like everything's going wrong.
Farce
And it's just compounding, like making bad people making poor decisions and it's selfish decisions and going worse and worse and worse. And then at the end, he's just completely exposed as a fraud. Yeah. It's great.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Don't mention the wool. I think I remember that episode. That's so funny. I think, because I had a friend, the same friend who introduced me to Monty Python. I think we.
Now, do you like Monty Python?
Oh, of course.
See, that's interesting for me because like I didn't grow up with Monty Python, so I didn't get him
till high school.
See, I watched like Holy Grail. That was like that's the big one in terms of like for normies to watch. Mm-hmm. That was my first exposure, and because I had friends who were like just like quote machine type stuff, you know. And I watched it, and I was just like, I'm not getting it.
Yeah.
And I tried to revisit it, and I appreciate it and I respect it, but it's not hitting that level for me, which is weird because Faulty Towers absolutely does.
That is weird.
So
I can't believe we're friends.
So were you growing up like a big?
No, again, like not to.
You're like that's merely. Were you just constantly saying that's merely a flesh wound to like everybody that you knew? I feel like I heard that so often growing up, and I was just like, yeah, I know it's from.
Tis but a flesh. Yeah.
All right.
It's just a flesh wound. No, yeah, look.
Yeah, I got the wording wrong.
No, I think I did too. I think you're the only person I've ever met and spoken to.
And I love Terry Gilliam.
Friends. And I love you, man. We are great friends.
Oh, I mean, we are.
Come
best
on.
friends.
Absolutely. Come here. I can't believe that we got to this point.
Without even talking about it. So how much did you really like it?
Without you liking Monty Python, I understand. Brownie Jones. Monty Python is one of those rare things where people have been like, it's gonna blow your mind. You have to see it. You have to.
And I think that's what it was.
You have to.
Yeah.
And then for me, I was like, yep.
That's awesome.
I know, it's great. Those are rare.
But then I need to give it another go because I haven't watched any of the Monty Python movies since Faulty Towers clicked with me.
Well, I mean,
and I watch Faulty Towers a lot.
That's great.
Like, there's only like 3 seasons.
Oh, I kind of want to rewatch them all.
And they're great. I've watched them so much.
Brownie, thank you for those 25 months of unbelievable support. Lots and lots of love. Thank you. Thank you so much, dude.
But I love Gilliam on his own.
Yeah.
Like, I love Gilliam.
Yeah.
It's warts and all.
Yeah. Well, and so you're saying Monty Python is the only one you've ever seen? Life of Brian or
so I
Meaning of Life or
I don't know if I've seen parts of Meaning of Life or parts of Life of Brian. I
Life
don't
of
know.
Brian
I don't
is
know.
Life of Brian is the one where it's Graham Chapman. He's he just is. It's like the Jesus story, but it's it's like it's.
I think I
another
saw
guy
the other
named
one then.
Brian.
Yeah.
Okay, Life of Brian's pretty good. Life of Brian's really good.
Which one has the fat guy in it? Where he eats like a lot.
That's Meaning of Life. Where
Okay,
like,
so
it's
that-
fluff or thin. That
Okay,
one.
then that's what I've seen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Meaning of Life is interesting.
I essentially saw
It's
that
good.
scene in like maybe 10 more minutes.
Yeah, I like TV show better than the movies. Interesting, Mr. Creosote. Yeah. Yeah,
Well,
Life of Brian is
maybe
great.
we should do a Monty Python month. Because that would be completely new. That would be a great way for me to get back into that.
There's a reason Holy Grail is the one that everyone. It's Holy
Is it-
Grail
do
and
you
Life of
consider it
Brian.
the best?
Those are the best. Yeah. My Meaning of Life is and now for something completely different are kind of essentially sketch movies, but they're great too. Those guys, yeah, Monty Python are just.
Never saw the show.
I mean, I've seen sketches.
Mm-hmm.
They're just great. Monty Python is just.
Was it just
thing.
a sketch? Was it like SNL type stuff or?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they would
Like
just,
that was the format.
Yeah, they were sketches, and then they would just kind of one would bleed into another. You can kind of sometimes you can sort of distinguish sketch shows by the way their sketches end. Like sometimes, like Mr. Show does that. I don't know if you've ever seen Mr. Show stuff where it's just kind of like.
Haven't, but I know it's supposed to be really influential and great.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's just nothing like. There's nothing like Monty Python. Monty Python is just like there are moments in comedy, and it's just like I really feel like it's like Chaplin.
Yeah.
Buster Keaton. Some other stuff. Monty Python.
Yeah.
Yeah. SNL without the cool upbeat in, but yeah.
Tina Fey!
Yeah. Michael Palin. Yeah.
Daryl Hammond.
This is what Terry Gilliam looks like. He did all the drawings of the feet.
Don Quixote. I still want to watch it.
Brad Pitt with a twitchy eye. Now we're just talking about. Yeah. That's not...
Madeline Stowe.
Well, you know what we should do?
Gilliam?
Yeah. We should do.
I've never
Brazil?
seen Time Bandits.
I've never seen it either.
So that could be a good
And
one.
when I was in high school, I tried Brazil and turned it off.
I saw Brazil at Paramount.
Yeah.
Last year.
Yeah.
And it was my first time.
Yeah.
And it blew my mind.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah. I didn't even get to see Robert De Niro show. I need to like.
Oh wow! So
Or maybe it is. Is he in it early? It's been a long time.
He just pops up.
Yeah.
Like throughout, he'll just be like boom, and then he's out, and then boom, and then he's out.
Brazil.
I think I watched
Money
whatever the most approved Gilliam version is because they talked about it at length before they showed it.
I didn't know there were a lot of versions of it. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, he had a studio cut that he came out against big time. I think he like put out a full page ad in Variety, and he was like, "Will you please release my movie like the way like my movie?"
That's awesome.
Because they had cut it down by like I think an hour,
Yeah.
like a full hour or something ridiculous like that, and he was very unhappy about it. It's an amazing. It's like visually it's just like this such a unique, beautiful take on the dystopian future type thing. It's awesome.
Sorry to bother you. Is that Gilliam? Because I thought for a second I was like, let's do Gilliam and then throw Monty. But I'm like, Monty Python is its own thing, and Gilliam is kind of its own thing. It's like Fisher King and
Fisher King's great.
12 Monkeys. 12 Monkeys, fantastic. I love 12 Monkeys.
I love 12 Monkeys.
Love it so much. And yeah, I'd love to do. Gosh, I mean, there's so much.
I'm curious
Parnassus.
to see.
I've never seen Parnassus.
It's okay.
Yeah.
I don't love all his stuff, but
Right.
but what I do, I never regret watching any of it because I'm like, we need people like him to just fucking go for it. And it's like the same thing with like Malick, where I'm just like, I desperately want Malick to do something with some structure to it again because I think he's that talented that when he does, it's
Yes.
great.
Yeah.
But even then, I still
Or
support
Lynch.
his complete, A Knight of Cups. I hated with a passion that I
really
am
liked
always rooting for movies,
I liked it a lot.
and
Yeah.
I was angry. I've never felt anger at a movie before.
Did we see it together? No, I think
No, but I think we saw.
Yeah.
Were we at the same screening together, or I saw it at with Peggy?
I saw it with
And
Andy Adams.
Did you see it at
Regal?
ASF?
No.
Okay. Or AFS? I mean?
Sorry to bother you. Sorry, I just that for some reason that didn't. Sorry to bother you. There's the one with Lakeith Stanfield. I definitely wanted to see that. Lynch month. Oh yeah, Lynch month is going to be crazy.
I'm excited to do Lynch.
Yeah, there's so much, man. There's just so much to do. I also, because like we were talking, like I kind of, like since we were just, I almost watching this, I was like, I've never seen The Magnificent Seven. I'd love to.
Yeah.
And I'm like, can I somehow squeeze in westerns next month or something and do Magnificent? But then, or we
Jesse
could.
James.
Yeah, I know. But I'm almost kind of like, it's almost like,
Westerns.
it's weird to do Magnificent Seven and Jesse James in the same month, but it'd be fine. But it also,
We need to do like
do,
westerns and then anti-westerns.
we could also do like takes on Kurosawa by like Magnificent Seven.
Yeah, that could be cool.
Jeffrey Epstein, season 3. When did saw Razorhead and 35mm? Yeah.
Oh man,
Cronenberg. Oh, we were talking about.
I'm still in Twin Peaks season 2. Akira took over my life, my nights, so I stopped watching stuff at night. But I'll now that I'm almost done, I'm gonna get back into it because I'm like 2 episodes into season 2. Yeah, Twin Peaks was awesome.
Yeah, I never finished season 2 either. Well, yeah. Twin Peaks season 3 is Lynch Unleashed for 18 hours. Yeah.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah, man.
I have to say, my first exposure to Lynch was at South by when he was there, and he did a Q&A afterwards, and it was Inland Empire, which is
peeps?
Yeah,
cool.
It's 4 hours. Inland Empire's long. It's
Yeah.
four. It's
yeah, we were
4
talking
hours
about yesterday. Yeah.
and it's shot on super lo-fi consumer HD cameras, and it works.
So are the rabbits, right?
Yeah, and
'Cause I saw
he
the
makes
short, yeah.
it's very grainy, and it works completely. Like he makes it work, and it's so nightmare. And Laura Dern is she's doing stuff in that I'm just like wow. Like what talk about trust in terms of like what she's asked to do, and just what a fearless performance. I was so blown away. And
so much. Sorry.
And I thought it was great. I was exhausted afterward though, and I felt dirty, just because it was like I was like, oh, I've been in a nightmare for 4 hours. It was harch. And then he got up on stage and he talked, and he's just this quiet, little eccentric man, and he would always, like, the audience would start to laugh after a while because he kept doing this whenever he talks. Like, there's always these little things in the air, always these little things. And this very specific hand move, always just. And it's just ideas that are in the air, and we have to always get them. It was like a tick because he kept doing it, and people started laughing, and then they realized, oh, this might be a thing that he's not aware of that he's doing, and they calmed down. But
Twin Peaks season 3 is filmed on digital, looks at and is full of CGI effects, which I'm pretty sure weren't just practical for money reasons, but an aesthetic choice, and it's awesome. Yeah. That's the thing. That's where you are when you're Lynch, man. But there's just so much. Like I kind of like, oh, I can't wait to do Lynch month. And I go, oh, because like, again, they have like Blue Velvet, Wild at Heart, Eraserhead, Elephant Man, Lost Highway, Inland Empire, Mulholland Drive, The Straight Story.
I don't even know what that is.
That's the one I think we've talked about. That's the Disney.
Produced, oh yeah,
where it's just a guy.
I looked that up. Yeah,
and it's about an old man who gets on a riding lawnmower and rides across the country to like commune or reconnect with his son or something. And it's like Lynch going like, I can do it.
Yeah,
just want to let you know I can do it.
He's like, I can do
David
it. It's
Lynch
not hard.
Did a Disney movie. Yeah. Isn't that crazy? I just love
and like
that.
The cover looks like a Disney movie.
Yeah,
it looks like.
He also directed Secondhand Lions. No, he didn't.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
No,
I was like, what is that movie?
The nuclear scene is. I got also a lot of just clever cheats. Like a character gets shot, and he just takes the camera, and he falls, and that's the entire effect. And it blood and totally works. That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, I gotta get back to.
Yeah, he's just on a level where I'm just like he's shown that he can do everything. So the craft is there. So It's that thing where it's like, show me you're good, and then after that, it's a choice. Anything you decide to do. Yeah. It's a weird thing where it's like, I know how talented you are. So when you do something that is cheap CGI or cheap looking visuals,
you go, what am I? What's my? Where do I have to get myself to understand this?
Interestingly, I was listening to a podcast with Michael Mann on the way over here, and he addressed.
Oh, was he in the car with you?
What's that?
You listened to a podcast with him? He was just there.
It was me and him in the car.
Yeah, and he was wearing a gray suit.
And he was with a white shirt.
Yeah.
And he was like, what are we going to go rob? And I was like, Mike, I don't know.
Yeah.
I got to go to this stream. He was like, I'm going to pick you up afterward.
Yeah. And then he goes, what happens. And then you dropped him off. And then he calls you. He's like, I just wanted to make sure you get there. And you're like, cool. And he goes, great. Because no one says goodbye on the phone in a Michael Mann movie.
Okay, yeah, it kind of makes me mad. He's a little rude.
I really derailed that. I'm sorry. You were listening to a Michael Mann podcast.
And he talked about the digital photography because it was a great interview. And the guy asked him point blank. He was like, I think a lot of people had issues with Public Enemies in particular because they were not used to seeing the way you use HD digital technology with a period piece. And he was like, when I dabbled with digital in Ali, and I'm summarizing because he talked about it for like half an hour, but he was like, I was on Ali and we used it a little bit sparingly, and we used it for a shot of Will Smith on top of a roof in Brooklyn the night Martin Luther King had been assassinated. And it was like one of my first experiences and like one of the first real world experience I'd used, like where I brought it on set and we was using it for a major motion picture. And we're filming Will at night and he's watching a protest like down the street, like a peaceful protest down the street because MLK had just been assassinated. And he's watching it. And as I'm watching this in Video Village, I'm just like, this is the most real, like, I felt like I was there in 1960, whatever. And I was like, there's no filter here. He's like, I love using digital at night because you have to shoot almost wide open all the time on film. So everything is very shallow and you get no depth at night. So everything's blurry and it looks beautiful, but it's all blurry and you can't see it. It
feels like a movie.
It feels like a movie. Yeah. And he was like, I had such a cathartic like moment when that happened that it really changed how I did everything. And he's like, I understand why people don't like it, but for me, on a personal level, it feels like I am there in 1939 with John Dellinger. Yeah. And that's what I'm going for. Is like I'm going for the utmost sense of reality.
Because that's how I get my rocks off, says Michael Mann.
And so for him, I was just like, huh.
Yeah, it's cool.
I don't agree necessarily all the time. Yeah. I think I like Collateral and Miami Vice. I think it works. But like, I was like, okay. Yeah. And now I'm just like, whatever you want to do, man. Because you clearly believe in it and you have your artistic reasons for it. So that's cool.
Did you say he said he was experimenting with digital for the first time on Ali? That he said that? No.
I think so, yeah. Where he used it in a major motion picture.
Wasn't Collateral before Ali? Collateral was after? What was Ali, 2001?
It was Insider, then Ali, then Collateral.
Okay. Yeah, I think Ali was 2001, Collateral was 2003. Okay. Crazy. Yeah. Crazy. And you were driving through the crowded streets of Mumbai or some exotic location, yeah.
Yep.
Seven Samurai was good. It was a good film, Zango.
Yeah. It's great, guys. Like, you really just need, it's just one of those things like, it feels like, I'm sure it's shown in film school and there's a good reason for it.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And again, it just is, yeah,
it's
man.
So heartfelt.
It's every bit.
I feel like it has a message. It hits on like societal themes and stuff, and it never feels preachy. Like, and he is such a master at talking about social class issues and things of that nature, without like Throne of Blood, and Ran, and a lot of his later movies that like address that stuff pretty deliberately, and yet it never feels like you're being talked down
hit
to
on the head with
or
a stick as you walk through a doorway.
Right. Yeah. And then you as an audience, you're just going, oh.
Yeah, I loved how like
he did it. So I was just like, that. He's so cute.
Yeah, he is. He's adorable. He's hilarious. But then I love that as he sits down with him, he's talking, and then like it's been like 5-6 minutes, later in the scene, and then he just kind of goes,
Yeah.
and I was like, right. They're just little touches like that where, and then like this they address, but I love that like when they're sitting there like, and it's like I think the night before the final siege, and Morgan Freeman is talking to his buddy, and he's like laying it out, and he's kind of like planning, and a young lover. Romeo, I'm gonna call him Romeo.
Yeah,
is just like asleep, and
Yeah,
I was like, "So great! That's such
Yeah.
a great touch." Because I go,
Yeah.
"Yeah, this is like they're the one." Yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
It just reminds you. He's so great at putting things like it's like the geography of the scene. It's like the geography of where of how the characters are doing. Like, is you just like this character of even this dude is asleep. And it just reminds you of everyone else who's asleep, and these guys are just running the show. You know?
Yeah.
It's fantastic. Glad you enjoyed the movie. Thank you. Yeah, I freaking love it. How about that bittersweet ending? Yeah, man.
Oh, what is
the
the last line of dialogue?
He goes,
it's
so
poetic.
we lost that battle too. And he goes, what? And at this point, I'm like, oh my gosh, what is this? It's an anti-war movie? What is it? And it's, which wouldn't surprise me, but it's, and he goes, we lost that battle too. The victory belongs to those peasants, not to us. And you just go, yeah, that's what that is. Because when
and then they cut to the wide, and you see their comrades that had fallen.
Yeah, and it's right
and they
after
lost more than half of them. Yeah.
And it's right after the girl walks by, and he's like, hey, and she's just like,
yeah,
whatever. And she goes, whatever. And you kind of, and then she looks back, and you go, oh, okay, it's gonna be okay. And then she gets down, and she starts singing with the people, and she's like, this is my life. I'm part of this village, and I was so shaken by that thing that happened with my dad and you, and that he's like, he doesn't get to be with her. They're just hired guns, and then they came and did a job, and they get to, he's like he said, the victory belongs to them, and they move on with their lives. And it's just very,
and it didn't even feel sad, because it was just like, oh, there was such a more important meaning behind that, because all of a sudden that added to Romeo's like layer to him, where it's just like, this is something that you're going to carry with you for the rest of your life, because this was like a first love for you, combined with a very traumatic / exciting experience that you're never going to forget. It's your first samurai experience where you learned so much, and were confronted with death and life and death and all that.
You saw that in his heroes got cut down.
And you see it in his face, like, you see that, and his face is just so young and innocent, and yet you know that this is the first part of your journey to becoming the guy that I think you want to be, which is the Sanzo. Is that his name? Sanzo, who's the badass one? Quiet, that he was like, I think you're wonderful.
Yeah, magnificent.
Yeah, magnificent. That was such a great scene.
But which makes me kind of go, is that why it's called the Magnificent Seven? Because of that line?
Oh, interesting.
I think, because it's a very pointed word.
I want to know who plays that character in the Magnificent Seven.
I want to know who plays everyone.
Yeah.
It's like, who's Yul Brynner? Yul Brynner, I guess, is probably the badass Morgan Freeman.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, he's out in front on the cover, but I don't know. I want to, who's the drunken dude? I really want to watch it.
Can we talk about black and white versus color? Do you think color would have added something, or the opposite? It had to be in black and white. I
don't think it had to be in black and white.
I don't think it had to, but like the fact that they chose to shoot it in black and white, this movie wouldn't look the same in color. Because like when you're shooting in black and white, you light it completely differently. Mm-hmm. Like you are much more not lenient, but you choose to use light and shadow in a much more dramatic fashion, because you can just kind of get away with it more, and it lends itself more stylistic. There's a lot of just normal day exterior stuff in this, but I think that's why I hate
it does
colorized
lend
version.
something to it. Yeah, sure. You know? I mean, it feels like black and white. I don't know. It feels more workmanlike. It feels more practical. It feels more.
I love
iconic
black and white.
In a way. Yeah, it's great.
I'm a huge black and white fan.
Technicolor, where everyone's constantly smoking cigarettes. Yeah. I
mean, I think there's advantages to both. I just think that when you choose, I really hate the colorization of black and white movies, because you're losing the entire artistic intent of the director and the cinematographer, and the production is like, all that stuff is so calculated to, like, they choose what colors they should use for a black and white movie.
Absolutely.
Because that's going to read differently.
Absolutely.
Red reads way differently than green.
Totally.
and so you're just doing a massive disservice, and it just looks terrible most of the time.
I mean, I think it. Yeah, I would say it definitely adds to it. Certainly, I love Technicolor though. Gosh, I love Technicolor.
Oh, me too.
So beautiful.
It's beautiful.
So
I
great.
black and white's kind
But
of
it's-
innately more haunting thing, especially something like this. Like
Absolutely.
cutting to the shot of again like the graves at the end with the swords in them, and he uses, and this is something that I've noticed now that I've watched a couple of his movies. He is a master. I want to know what kind of wind machine he's using to get the dirt and dust to fly by, because it lends such a mythic quality.
Smoke,
It really adds a mythic quality to so much of his imagery, and he uses it all the time.
Yeah.
To great effect.
Yeah.
Never, he can't overuse an effect like that enough. Like, and it just.
They're standing there and just everything's blowing in the wind.
It's so beautiful, and considering he does a lot of movies set in like this kind of era, where it's a lot of castles and like stuff that you would read in history books and stuff. Just those small touches of wind and dust flying up and just flowing across landscapes and through building pillars and things like that, it just makes it all seem like you're reading a story about ghosts.
Yeah.
You know.
But yes, and I think it's a movie about desperation and hardship and heroism against, but very hard scrabble, hard won heroism.
Yeah.
That is sort of stripped of its legend, which is what makes it legend. Like, this is the work that creates the legend.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, this is how. Yeah, I mean, it's
interesting because I want to say that he really utilizes the wind and the smoke the most, or I don't want to say only, but maybe is when it's like you're on that hill with the graves, and now they've passed on, so now they have become legend, and they will go on to be legends through story because of the sacrifice they made.
Yeah.
He makes the rice look fucking delicious. Yes, he does. I wanted to get millet and cook it so that we could eat I
millet.
would love to have tried that.
I know, because they talk about it.
That would have been great.
It's a long enough movie. I was telling Kosh, it's a long enough movie. They talk about millet. They go, just millet. And then like an hour later, there's enough movie that like an hour later, they're talking about millet again.
Yeah.
And he's like, I gave you rice and I took the millet. I could barely choke it down. At that moment, I was like, I want to eat some millet.
I want to eat millet because if they're saying, and I love rice, but like when you're only eating white rice and they're like, oh, those guys with millet have got it bad.
Yeah.
You're like, whoa, what is this millet?
Interesting how Kurosawa uses color in Ron. That's why I want to watch Ron, because the images from that just look amazing.
When he switched to color, like Kage Musha, he uses color like a painter.
Absolutely. Well,
I mean, it is bold, dramatic strokes, and it is
arterial sprays.
Oh, it is fantastic.
Drink sake straight from a gourd. Yeah.
It's all primary colors with him. It's really great.
How good do those buns look? They did. I mean, Mifune's. I mean, that's good. I mean, the dude trying to sell the bread. Yeah. The Sekido rice binge begins. Yeah, that's true. I love, man, it's so funny too, because we're talking about how it's because these guys are such legends and such heroes because of this story that is, it's made up, but they're just these little dudes in bathrobes padding around the rice, rice fields, just going like tat 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 with their swords out.
Yeah.
And then these little one guy's like Tubby and whatever.
Yeah.
But there are these like the equivalent of like the superhero shot is the first time they hear the alarm, which like later is great. Yeah. But they run and it's those match cuts of them running through the field and it's all six of them. It's so amazing. It's just, I went back and watched that a million times. I was like, is that just all seven? I was like, where's Mifune? I was like, right, he hasn't proven himself as a samurai yet, so it makes sense that and it's just like da-da-da, and it's just like match, like they're running, but it's them. And that's what a match cut is, but it's just so great. I go, oh, and it's like this superhero shot. Yeah. And then it's great that he's like bang, 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 bang.
It's so interesting because
I love that shot.
I read that
I love that scene too. I'm like, sorry.
When they were initially putting together writing the script, it was called The Six Samurai for like a year. And they tried to make the script work where it was nothing but like these guys minus Toshiro Mifune's character.
Wow.
And then they realized there's like everyone's so noble,
samey,
that if we're gonna make a movie, because it was already kind of pushing that 3-hour marker, and they were like, if we're gonna make a movie this long, we need to throw in a wrench of some sort. And that's so interesting because like that's arguably like the most memorable character and performance, even though they all are. But I was just like, oh, that was the last thing. And then they spent another year on writing the script. But it's just, I was like, oh, that was like the last edition. Yeah. Like you had to get through the whole movie first before you realize, oh, we need that.
It's like where you hear that Ghostbusters initially wanted to cast Eddie Murphy but couldn't make it work. You go like, what would it be like with Eddie Murphy? Like as Ernie Hudson's character, like that. I love Ernie Hudson.
Yeah,
he's great. He's great in that movie.
Yeah,
but it's just a different energy than you would have if you had Eddie Murphy as the fourth. Oh man. But it's just like, goodness gracious. I love how he carries around that stolen family tree. I know you get so much from that reveal. Yeah, that it's like a 13-year-old girl's name. I think. A lot of great, best things are added as second thought. Absolutely.
Okay, well, I guess one of the last things we can talk about is the fact that, and I don't know if this is a period thing in terms of like the 50s, because even I see it in his, I think it might just be more of a cultural thing, how the female performances are displayed, because you don't see it with the male performances too much. But this is in Ran, and it was in Cage Musha. Like, when they cry, they cry.
Yeah.
And it's always this move. It's like,
yeah.
And then fall to the ground
going,
and fall like this.
Yeah.
And then you're down like this for like the remainder of the scene as you cry and the men talk.
Yeah.
And it happens in almost all his movies. And it's very, like Rashomon has a scene where it's crying for like 10 minutes straight. And it's
funny.
I don't think it's a time period thing. I think it's just and like Rashomon has another, like they have a female medium who like can talk with ghosts and whatnot. And you're never like, they never describe if it's real or not, but she's amazing.
Yeah.
And like, so he can do different versions of female characters. Yeah. It's just because he chooses to focus on, and the docile nature of like Japanese culture and how females are in that culture. It was curious to me.
Yeah, it is because there's broadness in this film. Like the performances are great, but they're like this video made a point. I was like, yeah, that's right. Like it's not. There is subtlety in those performances.
Oh, I'm not even knocking the performance.
Oh, I'm not talking.
Because by the end, when she goes back to the field and she walks past, I'm like, that's awesome. Totally, that's a great capper.
I wasn't saying that. I'm just saying like, but even the male, like this guy was saying, and I was like, yeah, it's true. It's like when someone is anxious, they pace back and forth, and when someone he's going like, just remember when he's going, it's like it's.
I think
it's real, but it's also theatrical.
There's like a style of theatrical performance in Japan. I think it's called.
You talking about kabuki?
No, NOH.
Oh yeah, no, right, yeah.
And I think a lot of it comes from that, is what I read.
There's a Twinkie measuring 35 feet long and weighing about 600 pounds. Eddie's like, get the fuck out of here. Instead of that great Ernie Hudson, that's a big Twinkie.
I love where he carries on the stolen family tree. Oh yeah, that was so great.
Oh, you should
see
like
my honor.
Yeah. Well, but yeah. So anyway, so there's broadness in it, but then it's also like they're very cool. And he goes, because that daughter performance is, she's doing it, but she's doing what she's asked to do, and it's like he's like oh I'm sorry, sir, I didn't mean to anger you by copulating with that shrieking banshee that you keep in your house, whose hair you cut to steal its power. Because he's like, he just goes, and she goes, Quah! Like I was thinking of Kung Pao the whole time. Unfortunately, this is not what I should be saying. But, it's not her emotion is there, and she's doing it. But it's just like I'm going like, man, it's not a bad performance. It's not the actress.